So, what was the dual enrollment process for you in Florida? Like, what did that look like?
From what I can recall, I think the classes were free for a high school homeschool dual enrollment students.
Mm-hmm. That's how it is in Tennessee as well. My brother, who just graduated high school this year, his last semester of high school, he took dual enrollment courses for free under I think it's Tennessee Promise or Tennessee Hope or something like that.
Yeah, something.
But they do have a program in Tennessee and I think in Florida where it covers the cost of dual enrollment courses for high school students, as long as you don't go over a certain amount of credit hours, I think.
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that being a thing. Like, you could only take it. And also, it depended on your GPA and how well you did. Because I think at one point, when I was still in high school, they were like, you could take 7 courses because your GPA is still 4.0. And I'm just like, I'm not doing that.
Oh, you mean so I can get it down to a 2.0? Thanks.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm sure you would have done fine, but, like, not 4.0 anymore.
No, what?
7 classes at once.
No.
Did you ever take dual enrollment courses online and in person, right?
Yes.
Both. So what did you feel like the difference was between the two of those?
I retained a lot more information in person.
Mm-hmm.
Online, it was, I just didn't keep it all in my head as much. I don't know if it's just because that was how my learning style has always been, or what, but yeah.
And with the online classes, were they asynchronous, like you did it on your own time, or was it like where things still due every week?
It depended on the class, but in generality, yes.
Okay, but there was no like video classes or anything like that?
Not at community college.
Yeah.
If so, maybe 1 or 2, but like not for the entire semester.
Yeah. I also took a couple online courses. I think I maybe took 2 online courses out of all my dual enrollment courses, just because they didn't have those particular subjects in person at the location I was near. But definitely in-person courses were just better because the thing is with online courses, and I'm sure those of you who have taken them in any capacity realize this, but like, when you're in person, you're getting to, like, your professor knows your face. They know your name, they know how you act in class, they know if you're paying attention, they know what kind of student you are.
Yeah.
It's just a lot more personable. Versus online classes, like, you're just a name and a little picture on the screen, and there's not much you can do about that, because even if you are emailing back and forth trying to get to know the professor, I mean, there's only so much that they're going to tolerate of that, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
It's a totally different story than just walking up to them after class and being like, hey, I hope you had a good weekend, type
different
of thing.
Vibes.
Yeah. And so, when midterms roll around and, you are not doing as well as you hoped that you would, or you really need to ask specific questions and get examples and answers, and you really want help, being able to have that in-person connection with a professor is, like, way, way better, because they know who you are, and they're more likely to be like, okay, totally, like, let me help you. That doesn't mean all professors are good. I've had some in-person professors that just really should not be teaching.
Yeah.
And so is she. But the chances of getting help when you need it are more likely when you are in person, just because of the personable nature of seeing people's faces.
Yeah. And just their body language. And
just getting to know them and, like, what they're like in the classroom. But yeah, so there's that. Another thing that me and Shawna have talked about before is just how thrilled professors actually are when they hear that you are a homeschool student. Like, especially like in dual enrollment, I've heard that a lot, because you still looked like a high schooler. Yeah. I still looked like a high schooler for the most part. Like, it was very clear that we were young. Obviously, you can be mistaken for a freshman when you are young, because whatever, but also at community colleges, they are more used to seeing, dual enrollment students. So
it's a more common occurrence.
Yeah, so you would get the question, like, are you homeschooled? Or, like, just because they're so excited, or they would realize that you were homeschooled, and then they'd be like, oh my goodness, I love homeschooled students. They're always so respectful and so independent.
Honestly, that is what I got a lot of the time. And I remember one professor specifically saying to me, "Oh, you're homeschooled? What? Like, I love homeschoolers, you know, you're dependent, blah, 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 blah." And he's just like, "Automatic A, because I know you're going to do great in this class just because you're homeschooled, based on that alone." And I did get an A, so.
But strictly based off merit, okay? He was joking. He was not playing favorites.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it's definitely, it's interesting that the narrative that has at least surrounded homeschooling, like when I was being homeschooled.
Yeah, same here.
I know things have changed and shifted a little bit over the last few years, but when we were being homeschooled, like there was a big stigma, and especially from like public school teachers, that they just, if my mom like said that we were homeschooled around a public school teacher, it was immediately like,
yeah.
Ugh. And it just went downhill from there. Like,
yeah, like I remember when my mom was talking to my second grade teacher, saying that they're just talking about me and like, "Oh, looking forward to seeing her in the halls next year," or something like that. And mom's just like, "Actually, we're doing this." And then they got into a whole debate at the Christmas party. Like,
yeah, so there's just a lot of people who have a huge problem with homeschooling, mostly because they're not willing to take the time to understand what it actually looks like and what the results actually are.
Yeah.
But, you know, and they feel like it's an attack on them because they haven't chosen that. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you gotta leave some room for nuance, but still.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like professors, it's interesting that even though there was still that like negativity, mm-hmm. professors and colleges were the ones recognizing mm-hmm. how different students were who were homeschooled compared to a lot of the students they got who were not. And that happened to me even outside of like the college sphere. Like I took some classes at like a community thing or whatever. It was mm-hmm. like they did a lot of videography and photography classes in St. Petersburg, Florida, Tasco. But yeah, so they did a lot of stuff for just the community in general, like classes for kids. But then they would do a homeschooling class during the week, during a weekday, during the school year. And I took a photography and videography classes there one year, and they were constantly, like, the people who taught there, they were not homeschool people. It was not anything Christian homeschool related. Like, a lot of the homeschoolers there were secular, so it had nothing to do with really
it had nothing to do with religion.
Yeah, not really. Like, so it was just based off the sole fact that we were all homeschooled. Like, they noticed obviously enough of a difference between our small group of homeschooled students and the groups of kids they normally got, that they were constantly like, this is just so interesting that you guys are like so mature and put together and, you know, able to
independent workers.
Yes, like all of that stuff. Yeah. So it's very interesting how that plays out once your kids, if you homeschool them, actually get sent out into the world. Yes, they're going to get people who think they're weird.
Yes.
Because people can't handle the fact that there's different ways to live life. But
yeah, like, you may get like very condescending questions, and, you know, it's just gonna like give your kid tougher skin to build. So
honestly,
yeah,
it gives them a little bit of perspective a little sooner than other people get it, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what makes them very mature in their like approach to people.
Yeah, well,
at least in our experience with fellow homeschoolers.
Yeah, and part of it, you know, is literally just the fact that when you homeschool your kids, and you're taking them throughout y'all's life together, you're taking them to the grocery store, you're going to go visit people, you're going to go hang out with, you're not trapping them in an environment where they're only around other kids their age, and then the only authority figures are these people who aren't related to them, who aren't always nice to them, who are sometimes, you know, are enforcing things and not listening to them. Like, you know, there's just that dynamic in public school that is not present in homeschool. And in homeschooling, your kids get a lot more experience talking to people of all different age groups.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I've always been able to talk to parents of my friends. Like, that was a running joke when me and Shawna were younger, especially, and like I spent a lot of time at her house. It was just like,
she's always talking to my mom.
I'd always be talking to her mom. Yeah. And it's just like, it's not because I can't talk to people my own age. It's just that growing up homeschooled, like allowed me the experience of talking to people who were older than me by several decades, people who were my parents' age, people who were younger than me, taking care of other people's little kids just because it was fun. Like,
yeah, I agree with that. Like, even though I'm not a very sociable person by nature, I still found it easy to like talk to people of a wide age range. Like, I think the only time I found it difficult was talking to people my own age.
That's fair, but that's just like awkwardness that comes with being a kid. Like, honestly,
teenagers are awkward, and that's where it came from, being like, a teenager.
Toss two teenagers who don't know each other in a room with their parents, you're not going to get anywhere. They're going to be like staring at the floor.
No matter if they're public school or homeschool.
It does not matter. If they don't know each other and there's still adults in the room, like, they're not going to talk to each other. I swear.
like I've seen it multiple times.
I've been that teenager, and then like now being adults, like we've seen it a few times, like just things that like we've seen teenagers out in public recently, and it's just been like a whole like whoa experience of like,
it's like,
it's so funny, it's so sweet. That was me.
Yeah. Brooding teenagers.
Yeah, some brooding teenager vibes. There you go. Another benefit. We're just giving you all the reasons to homeschool. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the intent of this episode.
Not quite, but we're just talking about our experience.
But the title is Homeschooling Works. So, I mean, it does fall into place. So, extracurriculars. Mm-hmm. Did you do them?
Yes. Middle school, late elementary, early middle school, I did art classes.
Okay.
It wasn't a homeschool group. It was just like a community thing. There was this really nice lady. She taught just art classes to kids in the community, no matter if they were public or homeschool. And that's where I would go when I was younger. And then we moved to Florida, and I had more opportunities to do archery and MMA in high school, and those were my main two that I did.
And those sports during high school, was it through a public school? Was it through like a community group where it was just whoever wanted to sign up? Was it?
Yeah, it was just community groups, honestly. MMA was a Christian dojo, but it wasn't restricted to homeschooling or public schooling. It's just any kid that wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And same with archery. They just like had JOAD, junior something archery related. But yeah, it was for any kid, homeschooled or public schooled or private schooled or charter school or whatever.
Yeah, just a business trying to.
Yeah, honestly, it was a business offering classes.
Yeah, like and that's the thing that like I think a lot of people, not a lot of people understand, like, that there are so many resources, like, outside of homeschool.
Outside of homeschool, outside of public school.
Yeah, I'm just, like, here's the thing, is, like, just because you're homeschooling, it doesn't mean that everything you do has to be homeschool group. Like, there's so many community resources in some areas, and if you don't want to take your kid to the homeschool thing, you don't have to. It's just, you're gonna find more people that are okay with you homeschooling if you do the homeschool thing. You never did any sports or any extracurriculars associated with the public school, right?
No.
So yeah, but Florida they did pass the Tim Tebow law at some point. I don't know when, I don't know what year, I didn't go do my research, maybe I should have, but for those of you who don't know, that's also known as the Equal Opportunity for Access in Education Act, also shortened to Equal Access Act. And so several states have passed that act in recent years. I think it's like 30 something states, maybe 30, 31.
I don't really know.
I have a whole list here. I could count one by one, but that's a waste of time. But Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa, Louisiana, Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, all these states, have this Tim Tebow bill passed. And Tim Tebow, we all know, okay, athlete dude, professional, he's, successful in that manner. But he was homeschooled, and he grew up playing football for the local public school. And so when he realized that a lot of homeschoolers weren't getting that opportunity and didn't have any other resources to do those sports and possibly get to where he got in life, he was like, hey, let's put my name on a bill and get it passed. So so a lot of states have passed that. Florida is one of them. I believe Tennessee also has something like that, so that students who are maybe in an area more rural or whatever, or somewhere doesn't like homeschools in that, like homeschool communities in that area don't offer something that students can go to their local school district and be like, hey, I would like to play softball for your girls' softball team, or I would like to play golf, or I would like to do this. And in a lot of those states, there's certain requirements you have to meet, which is why some groups of homeschoolers are not in favor of this bill. That's why Texas never passed it, or I don't think they ever did. They definitely hadn't when I lived there. But is because a lot of homeschoolers don't do state standardized testing. They don't think that the state should have any say. They don't want the public schools having any say in their child's education. So there's some arguments to be made about like the testing stuff, but some states do have requirements that you meet certain levels of testing, just like your public school peers, in order to participate. But there's still a lot of states that just don't let you participate at all, or it's up to the school district. And I experienced that personally when
I remember that being really hard.
Yeah, we lived in Texas during my high school, like I said, and where we lived, there just was not that many options for theater. And I did a lot of theater. Elementary school, middle school, that was my thing. I did it my freshman year of high school because I was in Florida for my freshman year. So I did theater all the way through my freshman year of high school, and then we moved to Texas. And in that area, there just wasn't that much there. I think there was certain community theaters, but a lot of the plays that they were doing were not in line with like things I was comfortable with. Like they were, adult plays that were like super sexual, or they were Halloween themed, like horror mystery type stuff. And it just wasn't stuff that I was interested in participating in. And then everything else that we were finding that was a homeschool resource, that was actually a good theater program, was super expensive and like over an hour drive away, and just wasn't realistic for my family at the time. So, our immediate thought was, well, we have a high school here and they have a theater program. And so we went to the school district, because in Texas, it's up to the school district whether a homeschooler can participate or not. And we talked to the superintendent, and he was like, I don't know about that. Like, pretty much, there was one person who was kind of trying to push for me to be able to participate in the theater program, but the overwhelming answer was pretty much no. So I was not allowed to participate. They didn't even offer to let me try to test my way in or anything like that.
Yeah, no, it was a straightforward no.
Yeah, they just said no. You don't go here, you can't participate. And so that was the end of my extracurriculars for the rest of my high school career. I went and got a part-time job where they worked me pretty much full-time hours because I was homeschooled. Love that. But that's what I did in place of extracurriculars, because there just wasn't really anything in my area that was worth it, like good enough quality and a good enough price to do. So that's definitely like a struggle that I feel like a lot of people in areas where there's not a lot of homeschool resources, or there's just not a lot of resources in general, they struggle with that. And so I think that school districts should really be more open to it, especially when, homeschoolers are not these trouble kids. I know a lot of the narrative is it takes away the attention from the public school students. And like, if a homeschool student succeeds on the football team, then, like, what does that say about our public school students? Like, I've heard people use these types of arguments, and I'm just
like, it's a bad thing if like the homeschooler succeeds.
Yeah. So there's that. But yeah, so that was my experience with trying to do extracurriculars in high school. But I did do a lot when I was younger than that, because when I lived in Tennessee and Florida growing up, there was a lot of resources community-wise, homeschool community-wise, and elsewhere. There was just a lot to choose from. Mm-hmm. So it just depends on where you live. But if you're on the school board, I'm watching you. Let those homeschoolers in.
Let in the homeschoolers.
Don't make that kid feel like they don't have anything to do with their life. Okay.
Don't make them feel rejected.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, with like theater programs and sports programs and stuff like that, like even if there is like a community offering or like a homeschool offering, it's not gonna be the same as what these public school kids get, because they have like, I've been in public school like auditoriums and like their theaters, because I've like done volunteer stuff, but they have like, they've got the catwalk going on, they have the full lighting and sound system with the spotlight and everything, and I'm just like, as a homeschool student, anything I ever did that was homeschool related, we didn't have those resources. I did do some stuff that was associated with like summer camps and stuff where we were in a public school setting and we had all that stuff, and it was always like just like amazing to have the resources you actually needed to put on a good quality production. But yeah, so that was one of my pet peeves in high school, was just the lack of resources for people like myself. But yeah, because it's like, what are you gonna do when you don't have like a theater space, and then you don't have like a whole group of people to put on a production? Like, you just can't really do theater unless you have people and resources.
I mean, unless you start talking to yourself and put a flashlight on you.
Like I said, you can't really do theater without. Okay, but one last question that I wanted to ask, because I got this a lot personally when I was in high school. People seem to think that I was like being forcibly kept at home, even though if I had wanted to go to public school, like my parents would have let me, especially in high school. I actually heavily contemplated like going to our local public school for my last year of high school, just because I had already finished everything pretty much, and I could have taken a few more electives if I wanted to, and I was like, well, I'd actually get to do theater my senior year, and I'd actually get to do certain things, so I did contemplate it, and my mom was like questioning it, but she was just like, if that's what you really want to do, then we'll go do that. But if you had wanted to, would your parents have let you enroll back into public school?
It was definitely a conversation we had, because I had also thought about going back to public school in my high school years, because why not? Like, I felt like I was doing good homeschooled. Like, I thought I would be okay in high school. And there were some other underlying factors in that. But conversations I would have with my mom, it would just be like trying to find the root of why I actually wanted to do it. And seeing like, okay, is this something you're really passionate about, like wanting to go do with your education? And it just kind of like ended up, not that she would ever like really deter it, it's just like asking me why. And then eventually I got to the point where like I realized I really didn't want that.
Well, and it's also like, I feel like so idealized, and like
that's why I wanted it. It was very
in movies and stories and a lot of adults, like if they didn't have a crappy high school experience, they look back on it like it was the best time of their life.
Yeah, that's what I blame on me wanting to go, because of all the movies and TV shows I was watching at that time in my life. It was very picturesque and like, this is what it would look like if you go to a high school. And it's just like, oh, wow, that's crazy. And like, it's not actually that case.
No, definitely. So, well, see, we were not being forcibly kept at home. If we had really, really, truly in our hearts wanted to go to public school again, or in the first place, like whatever, our parents would have considered it. They were not trapping us in our houses.
That was like one of the things that like would often get brought up just by other adults, other children, making fun of like just being homeschooled. It's like, oh, you're locked away. Oh, you don't got any friends because you're home all the time.
When do you socialize? What about their socialization? Okay. Hey, Shawna.
Huh?
I'm so sorry that we can't be friends.
Oh, why can't we be friends?
Because I don't know how to socialize, so there's no way that I could have possibly made a friend. So that's why we can't be friends.
Oh, then why am I here?
I don't know. Probably because you don't know how to socialize.
I don't know how to socialize either. I just showed up in her house randomly, and now I'm just here.
I don't know how to socialize, guys. That's why I, recently had a public speaking engagement at a conservative club, and that's why I was able to get a few internships, and it's because I don't know how to socialize with people, because I was homeschooled.
Yeah, it was only because you were homeschooled.
You know what? I bet you have good relationships with your professors because you don't know how to socialize.
You know what? You're right. I do have good relationships with my professors, but,
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I guess that's about it for this episode. If you enjoyed this special blue-haired conservatives episode of the podcast and you want to see more of me and my beautiful counterpart Shawna, don't worry, we've got more content coming for you. In fact, the next episode is specifically about school choice and how the homeschooling scene has changed since COVID. Just make sure you're following the podcast so you don't miss any new content. Also, if you are interested in checking out Shawna's graphic design portfolio or you would like to follow Subtle Rampage on social media, both are linked in the description below. Be back with more content soon. Bye!